Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fandom Post Radio. As you can tell, things have been shaken up a little bit this week. So for now, I will be your host. As always, my name is Kane, and tonight we have Kestrel.
Hello.
And we have guest Darius with us to talk about some good stuff this evening.
Greetings.
Hello. So, last episode, for folks who were listening, we talked a little bit about the season, and this week we're switching gears and we're going to talk a wee bit about one of the, I don't want to say underappreciated, pieces of the anime production crew, but definitely folks that I don't think get talked about as much as they do compared to directors or the musical composers and things that we talked about last time we did one of these episodes. And in this case, this week, we're going to be talking about character designers. So, character designers, if you start looking up people on, MAL or Anime News Network, you may realize that it is a term that many people don't necessarily make a career out of, but they certainly do quite frequently and sometimes under various different job titles. So, while we were making this list, I definitely relied on Kestrel a little bit for some of those differentiations. So I'm actually going to pass the mic over to him for a second so he can give us a little bit of a rundown on what character designers do and in some cases not do and how they interact with the rest of the crew.
Sure. So kind of the biggest issue with defining who our favorite character designers are is the fact that there are generally more than one character designer on a given project. And a lot of the times, an anime will be adapted from source material, whether it's manga or something else that, even if it's a novel, is going to have probably character designers or character designs for at least the cover, maybe some illustrations throughout. So that would give you the base of what does this character look like, right? So you would think that the character designer for any given anime that is adapted from something like a manga would just be the manga illustrator. However, if you just throw a static, well-detailed image of a character's face at an animator, they're going to be like, what am I supposed to do with this? They need, one, to know every possible angle, every possible variation of a character, and every little bit of their body that they're going to need to care about. And two, they're going to need to be simplified enough so that it can be animated at 24 frames a second and digitally colored. And, in the past, not digitally colored, but still it can't have the amount of detail that you would have in a single manga panel or an illustration for a novel or a video game. So because of that, almost every anime will have original character designer and just character design, which you could also just call animation character designer. So those people are typically animators themselves because they know all of the specifics that go into animating a character. And so they're going to have that background and adapt usually someone else's general idea of what a character looks like into defined character sheets that every animator can look at and be like, okay, I know every angle of this character. I know how they look like when they have this face, or if their clothes are in this kind of angle, what kind of outfits they wear. And then additionally, they are very, very often also a chief animation director, which means that they will be the ones kind of at the top of the food chain for keeping the animation consistent on model, correcting any animation that comes in from the individual key animators to say, oh, this doesn't match the character sheet exactly. It's going to look a little inconsistent, and, send it back to them. So that is the role of the general character design role that you see in anime credits. Even if an anime is original, it's not adapted from any source, they will often employ famous artists, for example, Clamp for Code Geass, to do the original character designs and then still have an animation character designer that adapts that to model sheets that animators can actually work off of, for example.
Yeah, one of the big things that I struggled to not reconcile, but remember when I was looking up this list was the fact that character designer and like chief animation director and stuff wear the same hats in a lot of ways, and so one is not necessarily a carbon copy of the other, but it does make it hard when doing something like this, which led to an interesting exercise in making sure the people I was originally picking were actually character designers and not just people who directed or were animation directors, since they're not exactly the same thing. But yeah, it seems like it's definitely a challenging job in order to reach that good compromise that you need to if you're working from a source material, because yeah, it'll never look as good as a manga panel, and you just can't spend that kind of time and money. So you not only have to be a talented artist and animator, which is why, as Kessler, you were saying, a lot of these folks, if not every single one of them, uh, was a key animator or still is to a certain extent, but they have to not only be a talented artist, but also like a strategist, like knowing what shots are really going to matter, knowing when and where to spend that effort for maximum impact on, you know, the viewer of the art itself, which is definitely a talent in and of itself. And one of the things I find a little more interesting than just being good at art is having that keen sense of direction. And I think it's also why a couple of these folks, and I think it happens more frequently as a whole, you'll find them moving from the chief animation director and character design into just straight up directing, period, because there's also a lot of overlap in those two particular positions as well.
Yeah.
So
and yeah,
it sounds like a super tough job.
And another balance that they kind of have to deal with, which, you know, is relevant for a topic like deciding who your favorites are, is the fact that they already have someone else's work, so they have to figure out how they're going to balance staying faithful to the original designs that people are expecting to see and injecting their own style and, you know, introducing their own artistry to the equation. So, you know, as we talk about these people, some of them did the original design, some of them didn't. We can kind of think about, yeah, what are their common stylistic choices that have carried throughout their works, and how much do they kind of give that precedence over the source material or vice versa.
Indeed. Yeah, I know that has caused some strife in a few of our selected artists' careers, finding that sticking ground of sorts for them to stake their claim as a designer, artist, and then, you know, director and things like that, which also has its own challenges and risks involved and everything. So before we get into the list, I did have one more question regarding this for you, Kestrel, if you could answer it. If not, that's fine too. So do character designers, when we go from source material to animation, whether it be TV, OVA, movie, etc., is there a lot of coordination and work with like the source material author on top of it, or is it relatively like sparse or more of a consulting type thing? Because I would imagine these two would be working quite closely, at least in the beginning, to establish foundations.
Yeah, I don't think the original artist is usually that involved if it's just like a straight adaptation. You know, in the case of an original where you have like, you know, Clamp and then the animation designer, they might be working a little more hand in hand. But I think in general, it's probably just kind of consulting if they feel like they need some question answered, or like, you know, is this character has never been in color. Are these colors correct? Or if it's just like this character was only described in the novel, does this match what you had in mind for them? Stuff like that, I think, would probably come up. But I think in general, the original creators, it's up to them how hands-on they want to be, because they do have a lot more ownership over the IP than like in the West. So some of them might be a little more involved, like probably, you know, Takeuchi for Sailor Moon Crystal was like, no, you need to make it look exactly like my stuff. But yeah, it's case by case, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd have your sticklers and other folks who are a little more freewheeling with their property as long as they trust you as an artist and your vision,
Yeah.
so to speak. Um, Once again, another commonality between a lot of these folks is their propensity to be sticklers for details and how sometimes that can cause a little bit of strife. But I think it's also obviously a tool for success in a way. Um, but yeah, that was awesome. Thanks, like for that description on what they do and things, and trying to bring a little bit of clarity there before we get into our list as a whole. So I think now is about the time we'll just kind of jump in, and I think the first guy we're going to talk about this evening, we're going to have to take a little bit of a trip in the way back machine because this particular gentleman is a legend and a titan in the field and has been working in anime since 1963 or thereabouts, and I believe is still somewhat active today. And luckily for Darius, the first one on our slate for this evening is one Mr. Akio Sugino. So Akio Sugino is, I believe, Darius's favorite. So I'd like to pass the mic over to him in a moment. But I just want to introduce him a little bit for folks out there who may not know exactly who he is. I'm sure we have all seen works that he has been a part of in one way, shape, or form. But born in 1944, so Sugino first pursued a career in manga while he was in high school, submitting some short stories to these magazines that were known for their gekiga, which I think really, really influenced Sugino's style, and that is due to the fact that gekiga is more of an adult-oriented like comic style that was popular in the 50s and 60s, and a lot of their telltale signs, which after I read these, you'll figure out why one of his most famous works is the way that it looks, but it's cinematic art styles, sharp edges, gritty lines, a lot of hatching in like the textures and when people open their mouths. And the first thing that I thought of in here when it was mature, cinematic, sharp edges, gritty lines, masculinity is the one and only Golgo 13. It like embodies all of those things and is one of Sugino's most like famous products, and I think one of the ones that he takes most pride in as well. But when he wasn't busy working on Golgo 13 and things for Mushi Productions, he also had a couple other credits to his name. So he not only was a part and one half of the Golden Pair with Osamu Dezaki or Deski. I wasn't sure how to pronounce that, and I didn't make the time, so I apologize. But working on things like Astro Boy, Aim for the Ace, Blackjack. When he wasn't doing that, he also established Madhouse, of all things, and began work on things like Golgo and Space Adventure Cobra. So this guy has just a titan in the field, especially in the 60s and 70s, all the way up until the early 90s. But now that I've sort of introduced him a little bit, I want to pass the mic over to Darius here so he can gush a little bit about Sugino and why he chose him as his number one on the list, and we can get a little conversation going about particularly like Golgo 13 and stuff. But yeah, Darius, like you said this before in our pre-production, your absolute favorite. So yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, well, basically, I chose Sugino because, yeah, like I said, he basically, if you come to know me, you know my absolute favorite director is Osamu Dezaki, and they would basically tag team a lot. And the thing is, one thing about Sugino and Dezaki, they impacted my love of animation long before I knew what anime was, because he did work on a lot of these, and his style is that he does like do a realistic style. He'll take something that may look cartoony in a manga form and switch it to make it look like more square, less rounded. For example, take Blackjack. Osamu Tezuka, who originated the creation of Blackjack, a lot of when you see blackjack manga, it's very rounded, but as most Tezuka characters are. And then when you see the OAV series that Suzaki and Sugino did starting in 1993, they took it over and adapted it to their more square, more realistic type style. And I noticed that that's something that they really enjoy doing with all of their works. But also, like I said, they did do some work that influenced my love of animation as they basically teamed up on certain American works, and were very busy in high quality work. Most notably on a couple of shows one's called Mighty Orbots, the single greatest Saturday morning cartoon I'd ever seen, with the animation quality blowing away literally everything else.
Well, I bet, because this was probably in the era where we were still having like a couple frames per second in our cartoons, and then there were probably toy ads on top of that.
Oh, always, and it was really like, okay, at ABC Saturday mornings, you would see these guys. You see Hanna-Barbera, Ruby Spears, basic color palettes. Basically, nothing seemed to have a shadow, and very, very maybe one or two objects at the time. Whereas Orbots had like all kinds of color palettes, shadowing, moving objects repeatedly, and you could see, for example, there's this character named Rob Simmons, the leader of the Mighty Orbots, and he's very square and very angular. In fact, I think maybe two or three humanoid type characters in there, and that would be a prime example of this type of work. If you saw this if you saw this in the about roughly 1984, 1985 era, and like I said, Saturday morning and toys and stuff like that. They also they paired up with also do a couple of other American animated works. One called Bionic 6. That was a weekday show that they did, and they do all their same type of style. And there's another one. Oh yes, there's an anime called there's an animated version of the Bible called In the Beginning, and if you saw it basically adapts the Old Testament, all the big parables of the Old Testament. It ends with the birth of Jesus, and they brought that style, basically adapting the Old Testament, and you could see very clearly this style really taking shape. And like I said, we were talking a little bit earlier. Some of the earliest works, like Space Adventure Cobra, and Tomorrow's Joe, and
yeah, that's a big one too that I didn't have on the list. My apologies.
It's one of the greatest sports dramas ever, and literally everybody who was alive at that point could tell you where they were when that show ended. They can tell you where they were because it impacted them that much. But those guys, Sugino. Sometimes you were talking about how they would basically not only do character design but basically chief animation director, and on some of the projects, and you frequently see them do that left and right. There are a couple of items that were Sugino's seemingly worked on stuff, not necessarily with Dazaki. One of them being Cat's Eye, for example. There was a wonderful adaptation of a Sakasa Hojo manga about three female cat thieves. Three cat burglars. Or Carthy. But
I like cat thieves, though.
You can still see his style of how he handled those characters is very prevalent when you watch it. And it's like they did a recent Cat's Eye anime, and it's a little different. So that you can kind of tell that he's not quite there at the moment right now, but so but they're not. It's still not such a bad anime. So
Going back
yeah.
to that Super Orbots thing real quick, because I didn't even see that in like the list. Because I mean, there's so many heavy hitters here. The Mighty Orbots. An
Oh God.
interesting little piece about that too is, as I was reading about it when you were talking to try to glean some information, it's also a really rare Saturday morning cartoon, and it has a beginning and an end.
Yep.
Like it
The
actually
only one
tells the story over 13 episodes and just ends. It doesn't keep going and introducing new toy lines and introducing, everything, to try and just keep squeezing money out of the brand. It was a very dedicated short run that got in and got out, which anybody who watched Saturday morning cartoons back then, or even up into, my childhood and Kestrel's, those cartoons just didn't end. They just didn't
Mm-hmm.
can stop
Although,
until they were canceled. So
although
I thought
it
that was
was
definitely interesting.
it had an unfortunate end. There was a lawsuit from crazy directions that between Tonka and somebody claiming that this thing stole the design of God Mars. It's a real complicated lawsuit. It very is. But so it was unfortunately canceled, and it still bums me out that we only got 13 episodes. But yeah, it's a very rare thing, and like I said, the animation quality is like you're watching this, and then you go immediately to Turbo Teen, one of the lamest damn Saturday morning cartoons I have ever seen in my life. I mean, this guy literally turns into a car because he went into a nuclear reactor or something. Yes, I call it Karma one half to be honest. Yes. Water turns him into a Trans Am. I'm not kidding. But like you're like when you're talking about animation quality, this is it was a serious drop off. Like ew, ugh. So, but you can. I don't know if they still make them or not. Warner Archive had Mighty Orbots as this made-to-order thing that was available on Amazon.
Yeah, they had a DVD box release at one point
Oh
that
yeah,
has some really bitchin' cover art on it. Like they're playing
yeah.
saxophone and guitar, and they have like this really
Oh
wonderful, like the characters have this really wonderful like 70s futurism look
yeah.
on them, like flowing lines, neon lights, like a mix of the 60s neon lights and stuff of like your drive-ins and diners and things, but then they
Oh yeah.
also look like androids and robots, kind of like it reminds me of like Metropolis in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like that. Like literally, the particular story is that basically humans and robots live together and everything, and then there's this gigantic planet-sized cyborg called Umbra, a hollow planet so huge it has its own inner sun to warm it. That I swear that's how the narration goes. Um, and when you see Umbra, and then when you see some of the movie backgrounds, you're like blown away. And and that, like I said, you go to Ruby Spears or Hanna Barbera's basic style, and it's like, I want more, and then you know, at 13 episodes. So he was the chief animation director for that under Osamu Dezaki, and yeah, they made on-screen magic, um, and I have to go back. I have to go back and look at some of the other stuff that Dezaki had worked on. So I know that Dezaki did this. He used to work on Rankin Bass stuff every so often. So I have to go back and see if Sugina helped with some of the big projects like Frosty the Snowman or not.
that would be wild if
Yeah,
if that was the case.
yeah.
For sure.
Dezaki did do Frosty the Snowman. I'm not sure if Sugino did.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they would tag team on a lot of stuff. But yeah, the longevity of his work and the fact that he can change a manga source into his own style and still make it pretty faithful to the source material. That has always impressed me. and so and like I said, Tazaki was my favorite director, and collaborating with Sugino, I was like, whoa, this. I basically collected just about anything they do. In fact, I just got this very depressing anime that I think that they did called Nobody's Boy Remy, and
That's an early one too.
oh yeah, and apparently, yeah, Alamago just did something here. This thing is apparently all in 3D. Like they ship you a pair of
That's
3D
right.
glasses. Yeah, they ship you a pair of 3D glasses with this box set. So I looked through it for a minute. I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. So I'm kind of looking forward to Animego's work on this one here. But yeah, these guys they doing so much work. And until Dazaki is no longer with us, unfortunately, he passed several years ago. But yeah, Sugino, man, he still chugs along, and one of my dream artists to meet is Akio Sugino. If I ever get a chance, I'm gonna say thank you. I want to meet him and say thank you. So yeah, he is my number one when this particular topic came up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that you see that Gekiga style in all of his when you talked about everyone being like more square and having sharp lines and things. I think that's something he
Mm-hmm.
carried with him from his youth and like what was stylistically cool at the time compared to like Tezuka and the more rounded sort of appealing to children like level of manga. Like the story may not have like Astro Boy was not always a super like kid oriented or kid friendly property, but the designs definitely had like a very bubbly aspect that Gekiga kind of did a complete 180 on, which is really cool. But Kestrel, I know you have some experience watching some of Sugino's and Dazaki's works as well. I mean, there's Space Adventure Cobra in particular. I know that we have at one time shared custody over the movie
Oh, really?
and things. So I wanted to get your look on this as well, especially when it comes to like the establishment of Madhouse and things, which is another one of the more legendary like anime studios that's still moving along today.
Yeah. So Sugino is my number 2 on my list. So definitely overall like our group's kind of top pick there. And a couple of the main titles for me. One that was not mentioned, and to be fair, he was one of many character designers, but that is Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no surprise that there are so many character designers in that series because there are over 300 characters, and it was based on a novel series, so most of them didn't have any sort of design. So they had something like, I don't know, 10 character designers throughout the course of its, kind of 10 years releasing as a 110 episode OVA. Um, so hard to nail down exactly who was responsible for each part, but I think you can pretty easily point to the stuff that was Sugino solos throughout his career and kind of identify it as one of the most iconic aesthetics of 1980s anime.
Mm-hmm.
So I think based on that, it's pretty easy to point to him as one of the most important people in that position. A series that I just watched for the first time over the course of the past few months was Ashita no Joe. And that was really interesting because, it's split between 2 TV series, and it's not just like season 1, season 2. Ashita no Joe 2 aired 10 years later, and adapted a lot of the same material more faithfully to the manga. And Dezaki directed both of them. Sugino did character designs for both of them. They were done at different studios. The first was Mushi Production, Osamu Tezuka's studio, and the second was TMS. And even though it is Sugino for both of them, it does seem like over the course of those 10 years, he got much more comfortable with adapting the source material to his own style because the original series is very close to Tetsuya Chiba's style from the manga. It's much more of that kind of classic Tezuka aesthetic, which, is Tezuka's own adaptation of Walt Disney's aesthetic. And you see that as a pretty direct correlation from the manga to the screen in the first Ashinojo series. The second one looks drastically different, even though it's the same character designer. And then you get much more of that. We're getting into the 80s. Sugino is very comfortable with this position. He's very comfortable adding his own style to it. Dezaki directs it much more seriously from the get-go, even the material that was already covered in the first series by the same team. But all of that also comes through in the aesthetic. Much more adult aesthetic, much more realistic, grounded, gritty, detailed than the manga source and than what he did in the first series. So yeah, it was really cool to see his transformation throughout that, and seeing a lot of the kind of archetypes that he plays with throughout the late 70s, throughout the 80s to the early 90s in his really iconic work. And yeah, to speak to his longevity a little bit, like you mentioned, he wasn't the character designer, but he worked on Astro Boy, which was, the first major TV anime of all time, back in beginning of 1963, literally New Year's Day 1963, and did his first full character design role in 1968. And then he was still doing character design roles up until 10 years ago, and has still been a chief animation director right up until last year. And he's 80 years old now, so that's a continuous career of, over 60 years of working in TV anime, doing key animation direction, and character designs through, most of the most critical decades in that time. So yeah, definitely one of the most important and probably underappreciated people in the field in terms of kind of establishing an iconic aesthetic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the work with Dezaki alone as the golden pair in that sense would be enough for like a Hall of Fame career for anybody. But then the fact that he just kept going, established studios, still works, like you were saying, as chief animation director. It's just incredible the impact that he's had on the industry as a whole, and kind of establishing a aesthetic for characters through the 80s and stuff, using that style. And when he finally got a chance to sort of spread his wings a little bit there. But yeah, really, I know we started off really big, but it's just really hard not to when so much of this just kind of climbs, builds off of each other over and over again. But yeah, it's something that if you haven't watched anything that Sugino has done like knowingly, you're doing yourself a disservice, for sure. Like not just from a historical standpoint, but just like a lot of it just still holds up and is really fantastic today, like regardless of how old it is.
Very much
really,
so.
Really good. All right, well, I think we can steadily keep the ship moving here. So before we get on to our next individual person, I know we have a couple friends lists that we want to read off of. So I think the first one is Kestrel reading off some of his friends' picks for their lists in particular. So if you wanted to fire those off real quick, and then we'll keep it moving.
Yeah. All right. So we'll read off a few of these and then get back to some others later. So first we will do my friend Kyle. He's got number 5, Yuzo Aoki. Number 4, Akira Toriyama. Number 3, Yoshitoshi Abe. Number 2, Masashi Ando. And number 1, Yoshitaka Amano. Then his friend, I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, Noya maybe? I don't know. He's got number 5, Akira Yasuda. Number 4, Takashi Takeuchi of Type Moon. Number 3, Yoshiyuki Sadamoto. Number 2, Chiho Saito. And number 1, Yoshitoshi Abe. And then I'll do one more right now for my friend Andrew. He's got number 5, Akihiko Yoshida, number 4, Kentaro Yabuki, number 3, Sushio, number 2, Tetsuya Nomura, and number 1, Yoshiyuki Sadamoto.
A lot of familiar names coming out of those.
Yep.
Fortunately, so that works out in our favor for sure. But I think we're gonna shift a couple years into the future at the very least here, and we'll talk about another person who had a very large impact on sci-fi anime in particular in the 70s, and that's one Yoshikatsu Yasuhiko. So born 1947. Similarly to Sugino, he began drawing manga early with the dream of becoming a mangaka, and in the 3rd grade started working on manga and trying to get them published in magazines and things. Unfortunately, didn't quite pan out for him that way, but he did start becoming and working as an animator to pay the bills, as he states, at the age of 22, despite still wanting to pursue that dream of being a mangaka. And funnily enough, especially looking back on his career, really didn't care too much about animation at all at the time when he got this job. It was mainly just something that he knew he had some talent in and needed to pay the bills. But luckily for everybody, this started to change a little bit in 1974, when at the ripe age of 27, he storyboarded the legendary space battleship Yamato. And it was at that point that it just, as I think he described it in an interview that I read with him, kind of opened the floodgates for design work and starting to really sort of flourish in that role, where he started cranking out stuff like Giant Gorg, Crusher Joe, and then most notably, and his admitted true love, the first Gundam, or Mobile Suit Gundam 0079. So that is obviously was, an absolute, world beater, not only a show, but an enormous franchise, a huge brand and everything. But a lot of it traces back to, Yasuhiko and Yoshiyuki Tomino, and getting this thing off the ground. And, he not only did Mobile Suit Gundam, but he did the designs for Zeta Gundam next, and then eventually came back for the manga and OVA of The Origin, where he wrote, I believe, and did all the art for the manga, and then also did the character design and animation directing for The Origin OVAs that came out as well. Speaking of The Origin series, it is one of many accolades attributed to his career, where he won a Seiyun Award in 2012 for that. He's got several Lifetime Achievement Awards from the Japanese Film Academy, as well as Animation Kobe Awards for many of the pieces that he, either did character design work, or eventually he did, cultivate an incredible manga career that has many of its own, awards as well. An Excellence Award in 1992 for Namuji, 100 Years War, French Girl, like Joan manga that he created, that she lives kind of in parallel of Joan of Arc. And then, kind of similar to Sugino's career again, he also made a manga about the life of Jesus Christ, just called Jesus, from 1998 to 2000, which also earned him an Excellence Prize at the Japan Media Arts Festival. So this dude has a storied career both in manga and anime as a character designer. But, really his first true love, and as he states, his responsibility, is Mobile Suit Gundam 0079 and The Origin. Up until recently, he was still working on them as well, with his last works being Kukuru's Done's Island that came out in 2022, the remake of the infamously terrible episode that never aired of the original series, and then a manga called Inui to Tatsumi Siberia Shuppei Hishi, which is about, I believe, like a Siberian occupation, some more historical fiction on there, which is also lauded in its own right. I think this is another one that a lot of us are familiar with, if not on our individual lists as is. I think, Darius, you have this on your list as well at number 4, which, doesn't surprise me at all given your affinity for the, old school stuff out there. So I wasn't sure if you had anything you wanted to particularly, toss in the
Um,
bucket here for our mans.
yeah. There's one thing that's also he's very well known for. Also, aside from his work on Gundam, he was known for having um, basically given shape to the work of Haruka Takachiho when he created both Crusher Joe and the Dirty Pair. He basically created the character designs for both series, and made them for animation, and they basically have been iconic for ever since the mid '80s. Early '80s, he did it for Crusher Joe film, and then from 1985 on, he did the Dirty Pair, with a set of designs that have lasted with the TV show, the OAV series, and a standalone feature called the Flight Develop 5 Conspiracy, as well as a feature film. Yeah. Dang, Crunchyroll, get these things out, will you? I'm waiting. Okay, I finally let it out. Okay, it's not Right Stuff's fault. It's Crunchyroll. Dang it, Crunchyroll, get me my Kickstarter. I want my Blu-ray. All right, I'm through. All right, I'm cool. But anyway, that is basically has been one of his most signature set of design works that he's ever done. And unfortunately, as time has kind of taken that a long way, and it's kind of faded. But there are still old schoolers that very much remember the Dirty Pair is actually the more famous of the two, but they are connected in the same universe. And he basically gave life to both of those sets of storylines. And also, I enjoyed the heck out of Giant Gorg. I'm guessing that's why I think you and Kestro have him listed and everything. So I talked on Dirty Pair, so I'll let you guys talk a bit about Giant Gorg and stuff like that. But yeah, I love this. I love this guy. Oh, and dang it, I forgot. Why the heck did I do? One other feature that he also did. Neo Heroic Legend Arion. Great fantasy take on the Greek legends. It's basically it's like Clash of the Titans, but just goes in a completely different direction. It's a wonderful film, and I love watching it. He also did this thing called Venus Wars in the late '80s, which he also directed. So yeah, basically he would basically take the switch from animation director to character design and maybe basically overall director. Besides, although he really did do a lot on Gundam, but I really do like just individually Dirty Pair, the Dirty Pair Crusher Joe connection a bit more. But yeah, I'll let you guys talk on some of his other works real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, Castro, I wasn't sure if you had anything in particular because I know this particular individual wasn't on your list, but it's hard to deny the impacts and such. So if you had something you wanted to roll with, that's fine. But I had a couple little fun facts I also wanted to visit for Yasuhiko here.
Yeah. So before I forget, we need to keep track of whether or not every single person on our list has done an anime about Jesus and an anime with an iconic Joe in the title. Because so far we're 2 for 2 for both of those factors.
Joe's and Jesus's.
Yeah, Joe's and Jesus's. I'm going to write that down. I have experienced 0 non-Gundam works from our boy Yaz. But my favorite Gundam work by far is the Origin manga, which was 100% him. And my favorite Gundam anime by far is the Origin anime, which he was not only the original creator and character designer of, but the director. So I do think that he is absolutely the best person to have touched the Gundam franchise in every regard, not only establishing the original designs of the franchise, but nearly 50 years later, coming back and still kind of being the man in charge of the big UC revivals, as involved as Tomino ever was, and in some ways even more. So yeah, I appreciate him for that. I wouldn't hate it if in his 80s he decided that he was going to come back and do our grand 50th anniversary remake, which would be a full proper adaptation of his manga, because I think that he told that story better than the TV series or compilation movies ever did. So I would love to see him behind the wheel on that. And yeah, I mean, he just directed Kukuru's Done's Island just, 3 years ago. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility. So yeah,
No, considering
definitely
how much he
love his
says
work.
he loves it, you probably wouldn't have to twist his arm
Yeah.
too much.
I got
Uh,
I got the impression he really wanted to, because I know Origin, he was really impressively, it was really good. It was a good series, the OAV series, that is. And they really were wanting to redo Mobile Suit Gundam in that same style, and I would have been all for it. But
Yeah.
apparently, the funding, the ratings weren't there, and unfortunately, we didn't get that. And I'm like, no. I mean, we had a really awesome revival of Space Battleship Yamato 2199, and that's still gangbusters. It's still going. So yeah, a revival of Mobile Suit Gundam in this style, I think if they really gave it a chance, oh yeah, people would eat it up, especially in the
Definitely.
Western markets.
And the Origin, they adapted the new material for the Origin OVA, but the Origin manga is primarily a retelling of the original story. So,
Mhm.
and I think it tells the story much better. So
Mhm.
if he just adapted that directly, that would be an ideal remake of the original Gundam series. Um, yeah, so hopefully one day. And I mean, yeah, we got Kukuru's Done's Island, which was him directing a specific episode from that original series. So yeah, it would be nice. So 4 years, let's see.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the reasons why his touch on the series is so uh, superior is that he tells the story of the folks that are most interesting
Mm-hmm.
in Gundam, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but you know, Yasuhiko saw Gundam as a story more about the Frau Bows and the Ryos and those guys, like normal people who are just kind of drawn into war against their choice, their will, and then having to sort of live with the things they have to do to survive, as well as keep some semblance of like community and hope, even though they're not soldiers in any way, shape, or form. And it's a much more grounded series and tale when they're not
Mhm.
doing so much stuff with like new types and psychic powers and things of that nature. And that's part of the reason why he made the Origin in the first place, is he felt that Gundam, as it grew and moved on past the original series, past Zeta and things like that, it started to lean so heavy into just like the protagonist with the new type powers is the only person that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And it obviously that strays from that path. And what makes Origin so good is it's a return to form, and you really get invested with a lot of those other characters. And hopefully we do get some type of extra work from him on that in the future. The other thing I wanted to mention about him that I found most interesting while doing this research was his manga career almost never happened for a second time later on in his life, and not for bills or any reasons, but he doesn't know how to draw with pens, according to
Mm.
him. And he thought, because of that, I cannot make manga, until he visited someone else on my list, one Leiji Matsumoto, who told him that he could use brushes if he damn well pleased to make manga. And that's exactly what he did. And we got so many great stories because of it. Because what he does now is he doesn't when he creates stuff, he doesn't do sketches. He says he doesn't do a lot of memos. He just goes, brush to paper and starts with characters' faces and then works from there with brushes and fills everything out that way, except for stuff in white, which he also says he doesn't know how to use white ink, so he just leaves the white of the paper in. Which is also super interesting in that he just kind of plants his characters and his scenes out that way rather than coloring things in white. He just leaves negative space from the paper, and that is his white coloration, which is super interesting. But that little meeting of him and Leiji Matsumoto kind of getting his manga career off the ground, and also how he sort of adapts to his strengths and avoids what he considers his weaknesses while still making such incredible works, was also very interesting as well. But yeah, we can hope that we get some more Gundam stuff out of him in the future for what he's willing to work on. But yeah, it's actually, when you were talking, Darius, and you said it was probably Giant Gorg, I'm also with Kestrel in that I really haven't watched much of anything that he's done that isn't Gundam. Well, because it's such an incredible style and a legendary series and things. When I was researching his stuff, though, it was one of the first times that I looked and realized how similar people in Crusher Joe look to Mobile Suit Gundam. And things like that, like how his style carries over and also influenced so many others in the time period. It was like an aha moment for me of sorts. So I definitely want to check out Crusher Joe in particular, also because it's a badass name.
Yeah, it's been one of my favorite, and it's one of my. I do a panel sometimes called Classic Black Anime Characters 101, and my favorite character is in that series, a guy named Talos. And yeah, he basically is 80% 80% cyborg with a Gatling gun in his arm, and there's a long history about him that dates back to the Dirty Pair as well. But yeah, you really should check out Giant Gorg for yourself one day, because basically it's like Steven Spielberg directing a giant robot anime. That's really what it feels like. But yeah, and like these two little kids have this giant robot they wind up becoming friends with, even though it doesn't speak. And there's this crazy adventure that goes along. It's got that Spielberg kid-friendly but still dangerous type adventure stuff happening in it. And yeah, it's a wonderful show. And I think it can't. Discotech recently put it out on Blu-ray. If you can grab it. I hadn't realized you hadn't seen more of his stuff, but yeah, definitely check out Dirty Pair and Crusher Joe, Giant Gorg, and Ariad if you can. Those are my favorites by him.
For sure.
Yes.
But, all right, I think we'll move on a little bit here. We have a couple more names to get through that I want to make sure we give them their time to shine here. But we have another bit of list work that we want to get through here. Darius, I know you've got some friends lists as well. If you had those, read through them a little bit so we can get some more crowd involvement.
Okay, Micah Mullen, Miss Inomata, Tales of Graces, and Fujishima, Tales of Symphonia, are his two favorite character designers. Let's see. Ben Struss, Nikes, Yutaka Minowa, Nobuteru Yuki, Yoshihiro Kawamoto, Kitaro Kosaka, and Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, which I have a funny feeling we're going to talk about a lot in this podcast. Let's see here. Dave Merrill. We were just talking about Yaz. That's his favorite. And Tomo. Okay, let me see. Tomatsu Bara Kazuo. Let's see. Yoshifumi Konoda and Yatsumi. Let's see. Those are Those are Dave Merrill's favorites so far. Oh, yeah. Come on, Facebook, have a better interface, will ya? Okay, here. Yeah. Sorry, this thing's very slippery. We've got Mike Olivares with Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, Yaz, Yoshifumi Kondo, Haruhiko Mikimoto, Yoshihiro Kawamoto, and darn. Yep, Nate Milbank's making me feel guilty because one of my real favorites, Kenichi Sonoda, I couldn't put him in my top 5 because I didn't have room. Oh. So he did Kenichi Sonoda, Kosuke Fujishima. Let's see. Takahiro Kamura, Hirokazu Hisayuki, and Akio Sugino. Okay. I think I better stop there for right now because I got a lot.
Yeah,
I got a lot of friends.
That's about half. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll let y'all get back to things here, but yeah, don't worry. I got more friends.
Lucky flexing on us with your friends. This guy over here. Well, I think it may have popped up in one of your lists, but the next person we actually are going to be talking about is Yoshiyuki Sadamoto. So
wow.
I think we've got a lot of interesting projects and some definite modern legacy things here that we could talk about with Sadamoto. But yeah, born 1962, so significantly younger than the others so far on the list. By a good 20 years or so. We're getting modern here. Slowly but surely, we're getting modern. But of the many things that Sadamoto has worked on, and I'm just going to kind of gloss over them since I figure we'll cover them in deeper detail. Founding member of Gainax, worked first as a character designer on Royal Space Force, which is an incredibly beautiful beautifully created movie and things for folks who haven't seen it. Sci-fi rocket ship stuff. Very, very good. Fully wrote and illustrated the Evangelion manga adaptation as well, which took from 1994 to 2013. And, then when he wasn't working on Gainax projects like Nadia, Fully Cooley, Die Buster, he also collaborated with some unknown guy named Mamoru Hosoda to do some work as well for The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Summer Wars, and Wolf Children. So, just from that little bit of list alone, Sadamoto has really worked on some, fantastic pieces and some iconic movies in their own right. And I think part of this success, and the one little fun fact I put down here, is a little bit antithetical, you think, to creative expression. And in a Nihon Gogo interview from 2013, he said part of his success that he, attributes is he doesn't really go too far out of his comfort zone when creating art. He's a stickler for detail and being 100% perfect on everything he does. So he said that's why I've never made a manga or worked on anything for like soccer or baseball, because I've never played and don't know how they work or anything like that. So he just kind of sticks with what he knows and what he feels comfortable with, and that way it maintains this incredible high quality of work. But yeah, I know Sadamoto was on some of your friends' list, as well as I believe ours as well. So Kestra, I'll pass it on over to you, especially with the sort of Gainax, Ava, and Fooly Cooly things going on here.
Yeah, it's interesting how kind of parallel these two that we've just talked about are, in that they both did the original character designs for an iconic original mecha series, and then went on to fully write and illustrate the manga adaptation of those series. So yeah, he definitely was kind of, the visual part of Gainax in terms of establishing their house style for illustration. Very iconic, distinctive style. You can kind of pick his work out, both in he is one of the few who does animation and original character designs, so you can, get his manga or his art books where you can see the very detailed artwork that he does. And then he's also just as adept at making the simplified versions for animation that you can do every frame of and color in an efficient manner. So that's definitely probably his most iconic work is Evangelion, between both the anime and the manga. The manga, of course, as a storyteller as well, because he did change a lot of things about the plot from the original story. And then his work as the character designer for all three of Hosoda's kind of trilogy of masterpieces is also kind of equally iconic in the more modern era, the 21st century. And I think that's one of the contributing factors to what makes those three movies as charming as they are. And he works really well with kind of the fluidity of Hosoda's style. And again, he's able to kind of, you can see in the official art for each of those movies as well, like the movie posters and stuff, most of them will have like a very kind of painterly detailed version, and then kind of like the animation version where it looks like what it actually looks like on film. But you can see the kind of detail that he puts into it initially. So he's definitely someone who, could have more of a career as like a mangaka, or, doing just art books and stuff like that, because he has this capability to put so much detail into it. But I guess, growing up, going to school with the other guys who formed Gainax and forming the studio along with them, he just kind of naturally fell into the role of being an animation character designer as well. And so that has just naturally lent his skills to that side of the aisle more often. But yeah, I think like Sugino, you can kind of point to a certain era, like, all right, the 90s owes a lot to Sadamoto in terms of aesthetic.
Have you read the manga for Evangelion?
I've only read a few volumes here and there. I haven't read the whole thing yet.
Is it generally considered like a pretty high quality? I'm going to be honest, I never have, and I wasn't sure if it was like, oh, this is just some kind of like tie-in thingy that nobody ever talks about because it's whatever compared to the anime. But I mean, he worked on it for almost a decade. So
more than a decade. It was 20 years.
Oh, 20 years? Oh, yeah, 20 years. Sorry, 94 to 2013. I cannot do math. So, almost 20 years. So, obviously, people were buying it and reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it definitely has never had the profile of Anno's work on either the original series or End of Eva or the rebuilds. But it definitely has its following, its contingency. And yeah, I mean, I guess unlike the Origin, right, it was technically starting to be published before the anime series even started. It was still ultimately an adaptation of Anno's original ideas that was published ahead of the series to promote its upcoming broadcast. But technically, the first work in the Evangelion franchise was purely by Sadamoto in terms of release date.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out sometime because I've seen it in bookstores and other things a lot, and never really, and potentially my bad, but I never really took it all that seriously because I didn't know that's how the production cycle worked. Like, it started before and went for so long. I always figured it was just like, this is the manga version of the show for people who don't want to watch the show,
right?
Or just an extra because, for better or for worse, we also know how much merchandise and media Evangelion has, and part of me was like, this is just another thing they did to make money. But that doesn't appear to be the case based off of what you were saying here and my research into it when looking up Sadamoto's stuff. I know he had a little bit of work on the rebuilds, but I think there was a bit of a falling out with him and what would have been Kara at the time.
Hmm.
So, because I think he did some animation work for the rebuilds as well, at least 1 and 2, like 1.0 and 2.0, but I think things started to wane in 3.0 after some butting heads and, a controversy here and there. So, knowing that, I wonder if I went back and watched like scenes from those, if I could tell any differences based off of his influence being there and then not so much later on.
Yeah, I mean, it's still his character designs, right? So
Yeah.
it's gonna generally look the same. Maybe you could look at some of the new characters introduced in the last movie and say that they don't look as Sadamoto, but clearly the people who were working on it wanted to be consistent with his aesthetic so that these characters don't look like they're from a different series.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a particular favorite work of his?
I mean, definitely the 4 that I listed, Ava and the 3 Hosoda movies. Of those, my favorite, I guess, since the rebuilds, he was original character designer only, right? So like 2.0 is my favorite of those. So in terms of works that he used just full on character design, I guess Girl Who Left Her Time maybe.
Acceptable answer. Darius, I think you said you had a little bit of something that you wanted to talk about Sadamoto, a story or something along those lines. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think you had mentioned.
Not so much a story. I had written this really long article about Wings of Oniamis on one of my 30-year later pieces, and the formation of Gynax and everything. And just trying to really learn about that crew and how they came together to do the film. I still consider it a 95% perfect film. The UK version omits this one scene that everybody hates in this film. Everyone hates it. The UK version omits that scene, and I say it's a 100% perfect film. But yeah, they were highly, they're really good at detail. And, I'm watching Shiro, the main character, and just him trying to grow up a bit and everything. And it's fun looking at it. Yeah, I think that's my favorite thing. And also the running joke that Nadia has a descendant in Shinji of Evangelion because they look basically just exactly alike. This is a long running joke on that, so it's fun to watch that.
And just to speak on that for a second, not only is it true just because Sadamoto kind of has same face syndrome, but Evangelion was supposed to be a Nadia sequel, but they couldn't get the rights from NHK, and that's why they had to make a new story. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So maybe he really is the same descendant. Yeah, but I really liked his design work on Fooly Cooly. I still can't make heads or tails of Fooly Cooly. I really just can't get into it. But the goofball designs I see of it always stick in my mind. And so that's why I made him as part of my list. And Gynax itself had been an incredible production team at that point, and all the way back to the Daikon videos that basically cannot legally be released in the United States. You just can't
because
do
they're
it.
filled with trademark material, right?
Pretty much.
I watched Daikon 4, I think, for a previous episode at one point, or maybe a panel that I did at Otakon one year back when I was doing those a lot. And it is very well animated and looks great. And then it's like, oh, well, there's Optimus Prime and Darth Vader, so this is never getting released over here.
Nope. Bunny Girl versus the Universe.
But Anno will get to remake all of the series that he referenced in it eventually anyway.
He
That's
probably
the
will.
long-term goal. That's the
Yeah.
plan. Is he'll remake all of them and then release Daikon movies.
Exactly. He'll have the rights to all of them by that point through all his remakes. They were all just a ploy to release the Daikon animations.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, just seeing the way that they went from basically being fans to professionals, and well, I don't know. Maybe they'll they'll all get past their differences one day. Who knows? But I would like to see it. But Sadamoto was an integral part of that with his designs and everything. Although I'm still wondering why Captain Nemo and Captain Global of the Macross, maybe they're related. Who knows? That was weird. That was basically from a time when Gainax seemed to really like parodying a lot of their works, other anime into their works and everything. But yeah, when you look at Nemo and Global, you just can't miss it. You just can't. Like, hmm. Um, So yeah, but yeah, that's why he's not completely on my list, and I really thought about that when I saw him mentioned so many times. I sat there and think, yeah, he did pretty awesome stuff. So he's definitely worth talking about with everybody else here.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think what's funny is you mentioned how Royal Space Force has a scene in it that everybody hates and it was removed, and kind of drags down the experience a little bit for most folks. And in a similar vein, one of my favorite things that Gainax ever did was Nadia, and Nadia would be perfect if they removed like the middle 13
The middle arc.
episodes. Yeah. If they remove that entire arc, everything would be great. And unless I'm mistaken, I think that arc was almost put in there by like a board of directors' decision to like extend the series.
That was not Gainax's call.
Yeah, which is why it's so incredibly, antithetical to how the rest of the series is going. Slows the plot down. Everything grinds to a halt. Characters make decisions that make no sense based off their character development. And man, it just really fucks that show.
Yeah. And Anno didn't even direct that chunk. And not only the island arc, which is of course much longer, but then a few episodes after that are possibly even worse. So there's a lot of that show that should be removed.
Yeah, it's just like, man, that first arc you get, and then when they get control over it once more after the let's stretch this for TV, merchandising rights or whatever the hell they made him stretch it out for. It's so good. Like, yeah, the characters all are unique and filled with life and everything, and have these like wonderful energetic designs and things that are great, and then that middle arc happens and everyone just turns into mush. Like, it stinks, but it just reminded me of that, because Nadia is one of my favorites, like even with its imperfections, just because of the really incredible and whimsical adventure that it starts out being. Is such a fun experience. But yeah, lots of if onlys.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was definitely our first foray into what you could call some modern character designing stuff, at least because of like the Hosoda things. And luckily for our listeners, we're only getting younger, if only by a few weeks. So we're moving our way up. But until we get to our next person, I think, Kester, we have a couple more things you wanted to read off.
I like how we're like, man, these guys are so young now. He's only 63.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So some more of my friends here. We've got Moomin, number 5, Nobutero Yuki. Number 4, Narumi Kakinochi. Number 3, Atsuko Ishida. Number 2, Haruhiko Mikimoto. Number 1, Akemi Takada. Then we have Horb, number 5, Kurehito Misaki. Number 4, Boon Boon. Number 3, Shirabi. Number 2, Sobin. Number 1, Red Juice. He chose almost exclusively original character designers, pretty much all for novels too. All right, then we got Denko-chan. She has number 5, Ikuko Ito. Number 4, Shinya Hasegawa. Number 3, Kenichi Yoshida. Number 2, Arina Tanemura. Number 1, Mitsuro Kubo. And I think my last one is Henry. Number 5, Hideo Minaba. Number 4, Boon Boon. Number 3, Mokona Apapa. Number 2, Satoyasu. And number 1, Takeshi Takeuchi from Type Moon.
Man, there's a really nice variety among those lists. Like, I don't recognize any of them for the most part, but there is a lot of interesting names going on there. Because I honestly thought we would get a lot of like folks like this, or more, whoever the current visionaries are at this point, like Ghibli folks and things like that. People who work on Shinkai movies and in general, like stuff like that. But it's nice to see that there's a widespread appreciation going on.
Yeah, and since several people did include this group as one entry, I will mention that Mokona from Henry's list is the lead designer of Clamp. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, let's head on into our next person here. So, starting work in the 80s with character design credits starting in the early 90s, and then, working on perhaps one of the most legendary and well-known anime of all time, Cowboy Bebop, we have one Toshihiro Kawamoto. So, as promised, we're getting a little bit younger, and he was born in 1963. Several months and a year after Sadamoto, so we're getting there. But amongst the list of things that Kawamoto, has worked on or has established in his long-standing career, we have co-founder of Studio Bones in 1998, along with Masahiko Minami and Hiroshi Osaka, which is only further made a feat by the fact that Kawamoto didn't have the same type of like dreams or education / pedigree, perhaps you would say, as some of these other folks. Before he went into design college to start learning how to do animation and things like that, he just worked as a machinist, like a precision machinist for a while. So like a totally different field, completely unrelated. And then, after watching Gundam, as he states, he was heavily influenced by, as well as Macross and the Daikon films that, Sadamoto helped work on. He decided, why not get into this animation business? And then has since become, a highly accomplished artist and character designer in his own right. But yeah, he's worked on Mobile Suit Gundam through 8th MS Team and Stardust Memory, Cowboy Bebop, like I said before, and also the character designer for Wolf's Rain, which is an original work, and Kawamoto states he enjoys doing that as well as some of the more other original pieces, as it's more creatively challenging than working from something you get source material from. So I wanted to make sure to include it on that list, as he specifically talks about how he likes working and really flexing his creative muscles. But I mean, obviously, we are going to talk about Cowboy Bebop, given it is Cowboy Bebop. So, it's really interesting seeing his choices when designing those characters. He states that Spike is based off of Lupin as well as City Hunter, and the other one I liked most is Ein is just an animated version of a friend's dog at the time when he was making the show. He just saw another corgi and he's like, that's who's going into this anime. And then they just went with it moving forward.
Can confirm that all corgis look like Ein.
Yeah, all corgis are Eins.
Yep.
that should go into the like the dog show every Thanksgiving. For that, it's like, it looks like Ein.
Yes, right. That's the chief criteria.
Yeah, the chief, how much does it look like Ein? And then the judge just holds up a screenshot from Cowboy Bebop and then looks at the dog and then decides if it's worthy of being best in show based off of that criteria alone.
I think they also have to feed it mushrooms and see if it hops around.
All the other dogs have these strict criteria, and this is just give the dog drugs and see if it looks like an anime.
Yeah.
Aww.
And we're good to go. But yeah, so for Kawamoto, Kestrel, you know, you've obviously a huge fan of Bebop and things like that. So I can't remember if he was on your list in particular, but I know that you know, you've watched Cowboy Bebop several times, owned it in several different ways.
I do currently own 4 different Blu-ray limited editions of the series.
Oh, wow.
And as of
Indeed.
the beginning of this year, all 4 of them, as well as 3 other things of mine, are all autographed by Watanabe. Yeah,
Lucky stuff.
definitely a very important series to my anime journey. Yeah, he wasn't on my list. He's, you know, I've seen more of his stuff than Yaz, but definitely he's the Bebop guy to me. I do appreciate that, you know, Bebop and most of the other things I've seen from him, maybe half of them, are original works. And so, yeah, it was kind of entirely up to him. I'm sure, you know, Watanabe and some of the other staff had some input on general ideas, but he was definitely, you know, the guy who was establishing what this show looked like, and it became such a huge iconic hit. So, yeah, I definitely, you know, it's appropriate to be talking about these 2 back to back because I think that certainly for me and probably for a lot of 90s kids, Bebop and Ava were like the 2 titans of anime. They were the ones that kind of got us into anime for more of a grown-up kind of demographic, outside of the, you know, kind of the first tier of your Pokemon and Digimon, and then the second tier of your Dragon Ball and other shonen stuff. And then you got to your Adult Swim time of night, and you got to see Bebop and Ava. So, yeah, both very important designs and series to my anime upbringing.
You got to see the cool stuff and then the stuff that would do things to you emotionally that you
Yes,
couldn't quite
exactly.
process.
Yeah, the fun stuff and then the cool stuff. And then maybe I shouldn't be watching this as a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I think that's probably the single most famous anime of, you know, our generation, so to speak, and could be probably the most well-known individual piece of this list simply because of that, like for this demographic. But I think he also worked in, and Darius, you had mentioned this before when we were talking about Yasuhiko, but his first works were actually doing animation for Arion and Venus Wars. When those were going in production before he got his start in, you know, character design, which didn't really kick off until Stardust
on,
Memory, I think.
Yeah, and I still say Gundam 083 is definitely one of my favorites out of the UC timeline. So I'm glad of his contribution for that. The 083 basically. So I was watching this stuff as it was coming out before it hit the United States. So for me, when 083 hit, it smacks you in the face with how the ending is, and it's like, oh, that's what happened in between Zeta and the original Mobile Suit. So I've always loved it. Excuse me, please. But yeah, you guys said something about one thing about the design on Cowboy Bebop. I always bug my friends. I always say Cowboy Bebop is basically Lupin III fighting Captain Harlock for Fujiko.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is to me. And I always get these angry looks, but some of them are like, damn, he's right.
I mean, given the stated inspiration for Spike's design, that's pretty much spot on.
Right.
Yeah, it's like it really didn't hit me till I really looked at Vicious, and I was like, "Hey, this is Harlock." just give him an eye patch. Yep, that is him.
Yeah, the Lupin influence is very obvious. He has literally Lupin's boots. And yeah, Faye serving as the Fujiko archetype is also a very direct parallel.
Yep. And he also he also did this one really goofball anime called Golden Boy, one of the dumbest comedies in the world. It is a fun one. He worked on that as well, and I really wish it could be rescued. It could be licensed rescued. Unfortunately, it's not going to be. But basically, Golden Boy is basically trying to get women until to the point where he finally just doesn't care, but he just kind of moves on to the next adventure. If you can get one of the old, I think it was ADV that used to put it out a long time ago. If you can get your hands on it, grab it at some time. It's a lot of fun. Kawamoto. He basically carved his own name by doing Bones and everything. But I started with founding Bones and doing Bebop and stuff like that. So you basically you kind of have to put him in the Hall of Fame area at this point.
But he's still going too, like you had mentioned before. On to the next adventure. I mean, he did character design just last year for Metallic Rouge.
I went to that panel at NYC. It was a lot of fun, and him describing what those characters were like, and it was. And I've only seen the first couple episodes, so I was like, this is pretty interesting stuff. I'd like to come back to it one day. But when he really described why the relationship between humans and robots, kind of in some ways it's kind of reminds me of Blade Runner in a way. It's a bit different, but that's what the relationship between machine and organic life is like a bit, with the alien factor as well. But he's still going. I'm wondering. Okay, what is next that he's going to bring to the table one day? I enjoy watching him just carrying on. I would also like to meet him and shake his hand. Incidentally, Castro, you lucky SOB. Okay.
Now, I will say he was at Anime Expo as well last year to promote Metallic Rouge. Not Watanabe, but Kawamoto.
Kawamoto, yeah.
It was, or not last year, whatever year that was, 2 years ago. And it was billed as a Metallic Rouge autograph session. And so I was like, okay, I can skip that. And then after the con ended, I learned that people did, in fact, get Bebop stuff signed. So I was like, shit, missed out on that. But yeah, I got Watanabe. So hopefully Kawamoto will come back around.
I think if you ask most fans, Darius, what they want next, and I think they are currently working on something because Bones is split into like 7 different sub studios.
Yeah.
Everyone is hoping for Noragami to come back. That's when I was doing research and looking up the stuff that he was working on and reading a couple interviews. I think it was an interview with Anime News Network or something, where he stated they were working on something, but they couldn't state what it was, and everyone's just like, please just let it be Noragami. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah, he did the character designs for that adaptation, and the manga did end a year or 2 ago, so that would be a good time to bring that back.
There is a chance.
Yeah.
For something a little newer. Oh, sorry, Darius. I just want to say, for something a little newer, he also did the character design for Blood Blockade Battlefront, which I have, which I absolutely love, and I feel like is, I don't know if you call it a guilty pleasure because it's by Yasuhiro Naitao and stuff, but I love the characters in Blood Blockade Battlefront, and how they animate and the incredible action scenes from that show and stuff.
For sure, yeah.
So that would definitely be something way more on the modern end, considering it's from 2015, and a lot of the stuff we've been talking about has been from the 60s and 70s and 80s.
I don't know. That's a decade old now, Kane. I think that makes it vintage.
It's retro now.
Yeah, it's retro. Yeah,
for sure. Same with My Hero that he did some directing on, but that's also retro because that's from 2016.
Yep.
Time flies. We're old.
Indeed, it does. But yeah, it's really cool to see him still working because I know that some of the folks that we've had on the list previously are still working in the industry, but obviously with their long careers, advanced age and stuff, they're not as involved as they used to be, for obvious reasons. But yeah, Kawamoto is still chugging stuff out, like actively doing character designs, actively working on things, talking about the studio's efforts and what they're bringing out next and things, and that's definitely something that can be lauded under the right circumstances.
We've talked about, like, especially in our studios episode, how studios are almost always formed as an offshoot of an existing studio, and pretty commonly from a particular production team of an individual series, and Bones was exactly that from the Cowboy Bebop team, which is why their first work was Cowboy Bebop movie co-producing with Sunrise. Because it was the producer of that show, Minami, formed a new studio, and he took the character designer and the animation director and a few other people as like the founders of the studio, and they've kind of been running the show ever since.
Yeah, it's that's a good point to make because they were all Sunrise staff members at the time when they split off, and then proceed to make their own mark on the industry, and things like that. And they're still going. Like, I don't know where you would necessarily put Studio Bones in like a hierarchy of lists nowadays, but I mean they can still crank out the good shit. I mean they had Skate the Infinity too. So, if I recall, everyone here absolutely loved that show and how crazy it was.
I mean, I wouldn't say I absolutely love it, but I don't know that I need to be.
No, you loved it. Yeah. You have to say you loved it, or else we will have a beef, and we'll have to do a beef.
Beef it up.
I just realized they were like recently that they're working on a sequel, and I just don't know how to feel about it because the ending of the first, season or series felt so complete. I don't really know where they could take it, but the other part of me is like, I don't even give a shit.
Like, they just released an OVA a few weeks ago.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Hot damn! I'll have to check that out too. Are there beefs?
You'll have to find out.
Yeah, that's something I'll just have to discover on my own. But awesome. Yeah, that's what another big person in the industry that's still making stuff. So for folks out there who want to check them out, they can see things as new as just last year and such. So everybody check that out if you can. And Bones and his work also stretch so many different like genres. You'll find something that you like in there, between the Gundam stuff, Auron High School Host Club, things like that. So yeah, definitely look into those. But all right, we got one more person on the list that we're gonna be looking through here. But I think Darius, you may have had one or two other friends if you want to read them off as well.
Okay.
While I load up my little document here.
Okay. Rashad Moore, he's a tough one, but I'll name 5. Okay, sorry, bro. All right. Toshiro Kawamoto, what we just talked about. Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, Kenichi Sonoda. I really wish I could have talked about him. Kira Toriyama and Kosuke Fujishima from oh my god, oh man, that's a good one. And his runners up are Toshiyuki Kuboka. Oh, from Giant Robo and the Luna series. Oh, interesting. And also in Haruhiko Mikimoto. Okay. So next we have yeah. Yeah. Okay, Yoshiaki Kawajiri, Misutaka Kikuchi, and Shiro Masamune. Okay. And that's from Jason Howard. And why is this thing not working? Sorry, folks. So give me 1 second here. Yay.
No worries.
That
And
works.
yeah, based off of the names on some of your list here, obviously ours is in no way, shape, or form like the list. Like I went out of my way when building it not to make it a ranking or anything, but more of just a list of some standouts that we can talk about and highlight. So yeah, we definitely missed some others for sure. That have just as much business being on this episode as these others, but unfortunately, you only have so much time in the day.
Yep. Okay, Jason Howard, he also said then Tsukasa Kotobuki and Clamp. And Renee Woodruff, Kenichi Sonoda, she likes Kenichi Sonoda. Masamune Shiro, Naoko Takeuchi, Yoshiaki Kawajiri, and Leiji Matsumoto. And runners-up would be Clamp and Hajime Yatate. I guess I didn't realize they do character design. See, I'm learning. Okay. Tomoko's okay, and let's see. S. Morgan Daniel. I'm sorry. S. Megan Daniel. Like Tomoko Sudo. So hey, you guys a more recent one for you. All right, Tomoko Sudo, Yasushi Nishihiya, Kiyotaka Oshiyama, and Taro Ikigama. And oh wow. Oh, and their longtime favorites, Kota Hirano, Reiko Nagasawa, Nago Takuchi, Miho Tanino, Takashi Takakuchi. Oh, okay. Isaac Shear likes the character designer for Inuku Senkai Shirato. Oh, nobody talks about that show. That's a good one.
There's lots and lots of those as well. Lots of good shows that we could talk about for days.
Forever, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think I've had enough of you flexing on me about your friends again.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'll get to more of these guys later on. But yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So we have one more that we're gonna talk about here that I believe was on Kestrel's list, and Brandon's, who unfortunately couldn't make it here, as I'm sure he would love to speak on this person in particular. But we're gonna finish out the night speaking about Masashi Ando. So Masashi Ando, I think, actually has one of the most impressive entries into the animation industry, and one of the most unbelievable stories and how he got there. And by unbelievable, I think he's lying. But so Masashi Ando was born January 17th, 1969. He began his career while he was in Nihon University College of Art and passed a Studio Ghibli entrance exam during a recruitment drive for them, which is, incredibly impressive in its own right, that you're still a college student and you pass what I'm sure is an esoteric drawing exam to get in to help with their pieces. But he passes on that that exam and begins working for Ghibli and works on Only Yesterday, does some key animation for Porco Rosso, and starts doing a little bit of assistant animation directing for Ocean Waves in 1993. But it isn't until I make it sound like it took a long time, but the ripe old age of 25 that Hayao Miyazaki sets him as the chief animation director for Princess Mononoke, which is absolutely insane, being
Nice.
that young and then being put in charge of, you know, one of the most, prominent studios and one of their most famous movies and everything. But that's how impressed that Hayao was with, with Ando's work. And the unbelievable part here is when asked about his, inspiration on how he kind of decided to get into animation and art in particular and go to school, is he states that he quote unquote accidentally read the Nausicaa manga and started doing drawings of it. And I guess my main thing is, how do you accidentally read a manga? You have to physically open it up and read it. It doesn't just fall on your lap fully open and then you just go, "Oh, what's this?" I thought it was War and Peace or some shit. Like, that's the part I don't believe, and I wish there would have been a better interview out there that he kind of expands upon that a little. Like, what does accidentally mean? Like, he bought the wrong manga magazine or something? But I'm sure there's a little more detail there. But after reading Nausicaa, he started publishing illustrations and animage of characters from Nausicaa in particular, and then entered the College of Art, kind of using those as a portfolio. And then, things happened as I laid them out here. But after he was done with Princess Mononoke, he then continued working a little bit. He did some animation in the Yamadas, and then was the character designer for Spirited Away next, which is, once again, just another crazy responsibility 4 years later. So this would put him not even 30 years old yet, probably. And he's the character designer and chief animation director of 2 Studio Ghibli movies. Now, unfortunately, Spirited Away is what leads him to leave Ghibli after butting heads with Miyazaki over what I'm just going to call directing methods, in particular with Chihiro's design and motivations, which caused a lot of consternation between him and Miyazaki and led to him leaving. Though luckily when he left, that wasn't the end of his career. Not by a long shot. He only went on to work with people such as Satoshi Kon in designing characters for Paprika and Paranoia Agent, Makoto Shinkai for character design in Your Name, and then most recently, I think, directed and did character design with Masayuki Miyagi in The Deer King, which came out a few years ago. So it's not exactly like Ando faded into obscurity here. He just kept bouncing between some of the greatest directors in their studios of all time, working character design for them. And, in a way, I think that makes his career, as it's still going, maybe one of the more impressive on paper for movies, at least. Like, not a whole lot of work in TV series outside of Paranoia Agent. And then he did some work on Ghost in the Shell, second gig for Standalone Complex and stuff. But man, that resume is just fucking heavy hitter after heavy hitter on films. Like he worked on Evangelion 3.0. He went back to Ghibli at one point to work on Princess Kaguya, and when Marnie was there, Miss Hokusai. Just, oh man, it's just so much stuff. Absolutely insane output by Ando. But I'll pass it over. I know, Kestrel, I'm sure you've got some stuff about this, because I believe he was number 1 on your list or somewhere around there, and for very good reason.
Yes, he is indeed number 1 on my list. In fact, my top 3 original anime films of all time are Your Name, Spirited Away, and Princess Mononoke, of which he was the character designer and chief animation director of all 3.
I think they're all in the top 5 grossing animated films in like Japanese history too.
Yeah, I could believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so extremely iconic career with some of the most iconic auteurs in the industry. as much as I love TV series, it is in feature films like these original prestige films that you get to just really express yourself in animation from scratch without any constraints, really. And he's kind of done it all. He's done like half of the big prestige anime films out there since the 90s. And yeah, now he's getting into even being a director himself. So yeah, I think these are all just like we had Sadamoto with Hosoda. It's kind of he was with Hosoda, and then Ando did everyone else: Miyazaki, Shinkai, Kon, etc. And again, all original designs. I'm sure Miyazaki and Shinkai, being the auteurs they are, kind of gave him the initial framework for how they wanted the characters to look. And what he does with his artwork, I, like hopefully many of you, just rewatched Princess Mononoke in IMAX, and just seeing the beauty of the artistry of that film and his work on the characters. It's incredible that was his first ever character design gig, and he was only a few years out of school at that point. And I know, I talked about other original anime that really got me into anime as like a real art form, with Sadamoto's work on Evangelion, Kawamoto's work on Cowboy Bebop. And I remember seeing like a movie poster of Spirited Away back in the early 2000s, and I didn't really know that it was like it's from Japan, just like Pokemon and Dragon Ball. But just like seeing that image of Chihiro, I was like, this is different. This is intriguing. I need to experience this. And then, Spirited Away, probably the single piece of media I've seen the most in my life, maybe followed by Princess Mononoke. For TV series, certainly Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, and Evangelion. Your Name also, despite being less than a decade old, I think I had watched it at least 10 times within its first 4 or 5 years, maybe 3 years. So yeah, his work is definitely stuff that I keep coming back to over and over. And like in Your Name, he's actually one of 2 character designers. Masayushi Tanaka, who's also on my top 5, is the other one. And actually, the review I did for that movie back in like early 2017, I kind of talk about how it's such a beautiful collaboration between their 2 styles, because you have the style of Ando, which is a bit more kind of, solid, maybe a little more square, kind of fits the aesthetic of these films more, and a little more grounded, a little more realistic. And then you have Tanaka, who has a much more kind of bubbly, shiny, circular aesthetic that he has used more often in TV series up to that point. And so seeing them come together, I think, along with, of course, Shinkai's direction and cinematography and everything else, is a big part of what makes that film so beautiful as well.
2016, next year it's going to be retro too.
It's going to be retro, yeah, almost retro.
Yep, so think about that.
Oh man, time for a 10 years later piece.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I guess since I reviewed it originally, I probably don't need to do one, but
Go for it.
Yeah. Anyway, he's pretty much always been my number one between those 3. My 3 favorite original films from anime.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Like, it's really hard to make any sort of like logical argument against it, like that you could, just because of the the incredible products that those things are. It's just a shame that that relationship was fractured so much, between him and Miyazaki. And then the main reason he came back to work on Hokusai, Marnie was there, and Kaguya, is that Miyazaki wasn't involved at all.
Yeah.
In them.
Hokusai wasn't Ghibli, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Marnie was there, Kaguya, because he wasn't involved. But when I did the reading about like what directorial differences meant, it boiled down to they both had different ideas of what Chihiro was going to look like. And what happened in the end is Miyazaki basically just redrew every Chihiro design that Ando did before the movie got released. So you really don't see as much of his designs that you could have in the finished movie, because Miyazaki kind of took control. I think it had to do with a lot of her like body design and her body language, in being a heroine that wasn't as like outgoing and heroic as before. Like she starts the movie, being a timid, petulant child, and then kind of grows and matures as the movie goes on. And Ando was trying to reflect that in her designs, and Miyazaki was not an enormous fan of that, apparently. So that is kind of what created that split, and it wasn't until he knew that Miyazaki wasn't working on these pieces that he came back to work with Ghibli on stuff. But also, man, imagine being in a place in your career where you can even do that. You can be like, I'll go back to that studio when that guy isn't involved, and until then, peace. Like, that alone. But yeah, I think out of all these folks too, Ando is going to be the one who most people I think have definitely watched something, because if you've watched Spirited Away or Mononoke, you have seen Ando's work.
Yeah.
Or if you've seen the last Naruto the movie, which is probably the best out of everything.
The best Naruto the movie.
The best of the last Naruto movies.
He only did animation on that.
Yeah, but he still worked on it. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I think that was a really solid name to finish on, and starting strong and ending incredibly strong as well. I know that we each have some folks on our list that didn't quite make the cut here. So we can read through those a little bit, give a little shout out, a little love to some folks that we may have actually like mentioned offhandedly based off of the works of the folks who did make the list, but not so much giving them their own individual profiles and things like that. So, Kestrel, you have them listed in order. So why not just go down that order? So if you wanted to read the rest of yours that may not have made it, or just roll through your top 5 regardless, we can get that going here, because we definitely have some big folks that were left off, unfortunately.
Yeah, so like I just mentioned, number 5 is Masayushi Tanaka, and I mentioned a little bit about his aesthetic as well. So he has consistently worked on Shinkai's last 3 movies, kind of the 3 modern Shinkai movies. Things changed a lot with Your Name, so Your Name, Weathering with You, Suzume, definitely have their own style, and one of the many factors into that is Tanaka's character designs. And another one of my favorites from him from before his collaborations with Shinkai back in his more TV-focused era was Anohana. And then, like I said, there were like 10-ish character designers for Legend of the Galactic Heroes. So another one of those I put in number 4, which was Naoyuki Onda. And much more recently, he's also the character designer of Dandadan. And then at number 3, I have Kazuchika Kisei. Again, one of the character designers of Legends of the Galactic Heroes. And then for some more recent work, he's also a character designer for Made in Abyss. And then my top 2 we talked about. So number 2 was Akio Sugino, and number 1 was Masashi Ando.
Yeah, we covered the big ones at least. So we did do that. All right, then Darius, your list is next.
Oh. This thing works. Okay. My fifth favorite. We didn't really get to talk about Clamp much. But it was sort of a cheat. They kind of alternate between original manga and character design some work for other people. But I just always loved their beauty and aesthetics, especially with the particularly with the female characters or characters that basically seem to be effeminate, especially in stuff like X, stuff like that. Um, and I've always liked their work on Card Captor Sakura as well. Those things in particular were really cool. A lot of big eyes and very pretty flowing garments and hairstyles. So we talked about Yaz. I didn't get to talk about Kia Asamiya. Mr. Taka Kikuchi. He has a pen name. He was the original creator for Silent Mobius, but he also worked on stuff like Sonic Soldier Borgman or Hades Project Zero Rhymer, and I did a bit of work with Toshi Hirano on Dengayo and X01, a little bit of that. And also, I didn't get to talk about my other favorite, one of my other favorite character designer slash director. Some of my friends also mentioned him, Yoshiaki Kawajiri. I normally primarily think of him as a director, but his style of high contrast and very adult works basically created the foundation for Madhouse as much as basically in the 80s when he worked on Goku Midnight Eye, Cyber City 0808, and most famously, his works would probably be Ninja Scroll, which many people have liked in the 90s and more recently, and also Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, where people normally think of Yoshitaka Amano when they think of Vampire Hunter D, but like he basically gave him a more stylish look in Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, and he's like I said, he's the master of adult angular characters, more very adult looking, and very intense high contrast work. And probably the most lighthearted thing I'd ever seen him do was one called Birdie the Mighty. It was kind of fun. So yeah, and if I may, I'd like to finish reading my friends list. Just because to say I promised I would get to you people. So I just want to like give them their chances real quick. Let's see. Chet Breyer mentions Katsuhiro Otomo, which strangely none of us mentioned. Interesting. Shingo Araki, Yoshitaka Amano, Nobutsuro Yuki, and Toshihiro Harano. And Ryan Jones mentions Hirotoshi Sano, Tomonori Kogawa, Mutsumi Inomata, Orihiko Mikimoto. Oh, another one you didn't mention. And Nontaro Yuki. Carlos Ross mentions Inomata, Mutsumi, Takada Akemi, Uno Makoto, Muroto Yuhei, and Nagasawa Reiko. I think that is the end of my friend list. Yes. And I'm gonna have to admit the last person you just mentioned. I'm gonna have to. What was his name again? I feel bad not mentioning the last person you guys talked about just now.
Oh, Ando. Masashi Ando.
Okay, I'm gonna have to add him because that's a hell of a fucking resume.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, Masashi Ando. Yeah, that is a damn good resume. I'm gonna have to stick him into my list somewhere. I'll just stick him at number 5, just to say he's on there. But yeah, that is an incredible resume. So yeah, I'll pass it to you. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So, my top five, I think I may have only ended up with one on the list, which is fine because I do not have as developed as a list. Some of these folks I picked just because I like one thing that they've done like so much in particular that it was hard for me to avoid not putting them on the list. So my number five is Yoshinari, who did some character design for works like Valkyrie Profile and, did stuff with Trigger, I believe. But for the most part, I put him on here just because he did the character design for Little Witch Academia, which I think is some of the like best design that I've ever seen in a show. Like, I love all of the characters, how like pastel and colorful it all is, and like the like the magic in their uniforms and everything is so great. I just really love watching Little Witch, and I still, it's probably one of the few anime like series or things that I make time to rewatch every once in a while just because of how much I enjoy it. But yeah, definitely did some stuff there. Most recently, also did the character design for Cyberpunk Edge Runners too, which a hugely popular show that has some fantastic design work in its own way, especially in bringing the city to life and showing folks of all different shapes and sizes with their cybernetic implants and everything there. So that's great. Then my next person is Naoyuki Asano, who worked on a lot of stuff as an animation director and mainly did some key animation and things in there. But I also like, even though I haven't seen these particular shows, but has kind of taken a lot of modernization of retro aesthetics into his portfolio. So did stuff like Osamatsu, I believe did the character design for everything involving that, as well as, I'm trying to bring it up on the list here, Urusei Yatsura, the new Urusei Yatsura did character design for that as well. And just is doing a lot of work in trying to, retro HD, or as they say for like RPGs, like HD 2D type things to bring them into a modern atmosphere. But like, my previous list with Yoshinari, the main reason I added them to my list as well is that they did the character designs for Keep Your Hands Off Isaacan.
Oh, okay.
Which is another one of my favorite shows of recent memory, and also has some really like fantastic work involved there that I like looking at and really stuck with me. I was also chief animation director, but only for a single episode. So that job relationship did exist, if only for one of the episodes, but it's fantastic. And then last but not least, because it's one of my favorite anime of all time, I put Atsuko Nozaki on here, as the character design that Atsuko Nozaki did was for Ranking of Kings. And yeah, that's like, obviously there are other things on here, but like I said, I kind of cheated in making this list at first. And I skipped Leiji Matsumoto. My bad, but Leiji Matsumoto is on my list too because I love Harlock and the wispy, ethereal designs that all the characters have in Harlock, and how I think that influenced a lot of sci-fi in its own right, especially with the designs of like the women who burn like paper from the Harlock manga and things. It's fantastic. But Atsuko Nozaki, yeah, for just like the ranking of kings and having such a beautiful blend of like Disney style animation and bounciness and life with like Tezuka style art too, with the characters, that really is what made Ranking of Kings so special when it came out, even with its like kind of lackluster ending. But that's my list. Yoshinari, Naoyuki Asano, Leiji Matsumoto, Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, who we talked about, and then Atsuko Nozaki. So then last but not least, we have Brandon's, and I'll just read his off since I'm still talking. But number 5, Futoshi Nishiya. 4 is Toshihiro Kawamoto, who we talked about. Takehiro Kishida at number 3. Naoki Urasawa at 2. And then Takeshi Koike at number 1. So, as you can see, many folks that we didn't really get a chance to give light to, or groups of folks like Clamp in particular and things. But that's the beauty of an animation industry that's been around for going on 80, 90 years or so, is that you'll never cover them all. Too many to count. But yeah. So alrighty. Well, normally at the end of an episode here. Oh wait, we have the aggregate list.
Yeah, most
That's my
important part of
bad.
the episode.
The most important part. My bad. My bad. I'll just excuse myself off of the episode here.
Thank you.
But Kestrel, if you've got the aggregate list, yeah, let us hear it.
Yeah, so aggregating together all of our lists, all of your lists, all of these top fives together, we get top 7 with no ties. So number 7 is Masashi Ando with 9 points, one number 1, mine. Number 6, Akio Sugino, 10 points, one number 1, Darius's. Number 5, Yoshiaki Kawajiri, 11 points, one number 1. Number 4, Toshihiro Kawamoto, 12 points, one number 1. Number 3, Kenichi Sonoda, 13 points, 2 number 1s. Number 2, Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, 15 points, one number 1. And number 1, Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, 18 points and 2 number 1s.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right. Well, the aggregate list is good. That is definitive and will never be questioned. So now we'll move into the final part of our episode, as we normally end these with some recommendations if anybody has anything. I know for this week I don't have anything necessarily new, but I did want to give a shout out to our co-host and normal engineer Kate in recommending Apocalypse Hotel, because I started watching that and it is indeed very good, and I think something that would be highly enjoyable for a variety of audiences. So if you have not started watching that this season, or you've got something else on your list that's a little on the mediocre side, give Apocalypse Hotel a shot, and I think there's a really good chance it's going to kick that shitty anime you're watching off your list and replace it with something that really has a lot of promise and is quite enjoyable, at least through these first 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah, I like to keep things kind of perennial on these episodes, and recommend stuff that is relevant to the people we talked about. So in keeping with that theme, obviously everything that I mentioned for my favorites, I would recommend. In particular, like I said, I just watched all of Ashita no Joe, Tomorrow's Joe on Crunchyroll in the past few months. So if you want to see some good Sugino, then that's a great series, especially the second series, which, like I said, veers much more toward his own style. And you can stop the first one partway through. You should look up what the exact episode is. I want to say 53, something like that, and go right to 2. And then not 100% relevant to anime character designs, but as we mentioned, Yasuhiko's perhaps greatest work is the Gundam The Origin manga, and there will be a brand new deluxe edition release of that coming out in the next few months. So recommend everyone go check that out, because I think it is by far the best Gundam thing, period.
Yeah, I can second that.
Nice. And Kane is a much bigger Gundam fan than me, so
it's really unquestionably the best of that, like original story, for sure. Movies, TV show included, all that.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, Sadamoto, he's had some art books over the years, Ava and otherwise, so check those out. You'll see him around. Also, Toshihiro Kawamoto. There's, I don't know if you can still get it on Crunchyroll, but there's a Japanese Cowboy Bebop the book, I think it's called. That's very big, very fancy, very expensive. But
oh damn,
it has kind of all the beautiful artwork from, I think, like, it's got 2 books in it. One of them's character designs from Kawamoto, and then the other one is like backgrounds and mechanical designs and stuff like that. So yeah, recommend that if you can still find it. And then yeah, Masashi Ando. Hopefully you just saw Princess Mononoke in IMAX, and if not, definitely check out all the movies he's worked on in the biggest screen that you can find, highest quality you can find. And speaking of movies in theaters, this has nothing to do with anime at all. But before I forget, and while it's still in theaters, I would like to recommend Sinners because it is an incredible film.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be watching that this weekend.
Nice.
I think it's supposed to hit IMAX again. When it does, I'm going to go check that out.
It's coming back to IMAX? Damn, I should have waited.
Yeah.
I waited like right until it lost the IMAX screens to Thunderbolts to finally see it. And I guess now it's coming back.
Yeah, the 15th, as I understand, I think it's supposed to come back.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Let's see, recommendations. There's a shorter film that Animego just released recently called Nasu's Summer in Andalusia. It is a wonderful shorter. It's a shorter film. It's not 2 hours or anything, but it's mostly
42 minutes. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say. King has been waiting for that release for years and years.
I saw it a long time ago, and I'm glad that Animego took a chance on it. It's this wonderful thing about bike racing. It's great.
Yeah,
some people from Ghibli, from the Ghibli animation team worked on it, and yeah, it's a phenomenal thing. Also, I checked out the redone version of Rose Versailles, and it's
indeed.
It's nice to see it back, and it's pretty, but I'm so used to the old school sketch lines and motion lines from Dazaki's work on the TV show, and it feels weird. Sorry.
And from Sugino.
Oh, and Sugino. Sorry, Dazaki and Sugino. Sorry, and basically they I just really do miss that old aesthetic. So it's a little jarring, and also hearing an English song was really weird, and just for this classic anime. It's real pretty, but it's a bit rushed. It really, I agree with some friends that it really should have been stretched out to feel the full impact of the story. But it is still nice to look at. It popped up on Netflix starting on April 30th recently, and you can give it a shot. And also, like I said, I got also Nobody's Boy Remy, and this is really old anime that Zaki Sugino also did. This little boy's just having a really shitty life. And the thing is, like I said, it's actually made in 3D. They give you 3D glasses to watch this whole thing in, and it's a real fun experience. I can't recommend that aspect. Recommend it enough for that aspect alone. Because I don't think I've ever seen any anime done using that technique before up until now. And they even have this little bit about the history of 3D work on television from the 20s till the. in film and TV from the 20s, 30s, and until more recent. Excuse me, till more recent times. And I had been fun watching it, so hopefully I can, if I have time, I will get to try to write a review of these last two discs I was just telling you about. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Nasu is something that I would also definitely recommend, and directed by a accomplished character designer in his own right, Kitaro Kosaka, who did a lot of good work too, and I think has recently done character design for The Wind Rises, I think, and has done some other stuff too, for sure. Monster did the original character designs for Monster.
Ooh,
as well.
Nice.
So yeah, that's, as Kestrel stated, I was waiting for that to come to the United States for a very, very long time. Because there's also just not many anime properties involving like cycling and things outside of like Yaomushi Pedal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I grabbed it a long time ago. through the interesting circuits, and I watched, and I was like, "Oh, I love this! I love this!
Yeah,
I
it
love this
has a
film."
sequel too, which I don't think
Yes,
we have any word if that's ever making it over or what that is, but that's called Nasu.
it was in Spain, I believe.
Uh, it's Nasu Migratory Bird with Suitcase, which is a weird name, but I don't know much about it other than that. And it's also by like directed by Kosaka again and stuff. But so there is also a sequel to it that came out in the late 2000s, I think, because Nasu the original is in the early 2000s, like 02, 03, something like that.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so maybe
Uh,
something you can try to venture out and find.
some way.
But all right, well, I think that handles the recommendations and such. So lots of good stuff based off the recommendations. Just this list of folks alone. If you haven't watched some of these things, you can really see some of the cream of the crop that anime has to offer. But with that being said, I think it's about time we wrap it up for the evening. So if Kestrel, you could inform everyone of all of the evil platforms we put our product on.
Yes, all of the evil platforms. You like Google? You like Apple? Yeah, we're on all of them. Well, Google doesn't have a Google branded platform anymore, but we are on YouTube. You can't see us; it's just audio, but you can subscribe on YouTube. YouTube Music, same deal. Apple Podcasts, of course, is one of the big ones. Spotify as well, quite evil, I've heard.
Yes.
iHeartRadio. Yeah, you can just find the embeds from where we host them on Libsyn, posted on fandompost.com. You can go old school, subscribe to an RSS feed. I post that link sometimes if I have space in the tweet. Yeah, well, you'll find us on all the podcatchers that you listen to. If you don't find us, let us know. I don't know how you're listening to this, but if you listen to this one somehow else and you can't find us, let us know. And you can let us know on social media, like Twitter, speaking of horribly evil platforms, Blue Sky, Facebook. If you just want to email us, fanpostradio@gmail.com. But yeah, on any of those platforms, if you can follow us, share our stuff, get in contact with us, subscribe, rate, and review on the podcast platforms. I am on Facebook and, I'm on Facebook if you want to stalk me, I guess. Or, Facebook and LinkedIn for your personal stalking needs. Also on Twitter @FullMetalKyoma and Blue Sky, kestrelswift.bisky.social. Yeah, I just did a for-year consideration screening of Solo Leveling that Crunchyroll put on at the Television Academy, so you can read my thoughts about it.
Nice. Well, alrighty. Well, as always, thank everyone for listening, and hopefully you found some stuff that you can venture out and experience on your own from this list of highly accomplished designers, and even the ones that we didn't have a whole lot of time to dedicate to. So until next episode, we'll talk to you later, and stay safe, enjoy some anime, enjoy the season.
Yeah.
8 days.